This video is sponsored by Squarespace. From 44-year-old Fernando Alonso to 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli, a quarter of a century covers the 20 drivers on the 2025 Formula 1 grid. So, how did they all get here? I did this exact video back in 2020 and in 2023, and the driver lineup has changed plenty since then, so let's take a short view back to the past, shall we? 7 years in the past, to be precise. My name's Tommo, let's talk about it. 1st of October 2018, here we come. 1st of October is a nice round number, and it's the day I started scripting this video. And on the 1st of October 2018, it was a Monday, and we had just wrapped up the 2018 Russian Grand Prix in Sochi. Oh, how I do not miss that track. Williams still had that wicked Martini livery, McLaren had just ditched Honda engines for Renault, and Lawrence Stroll had just purchased Force India, renaming it to Racing Point back in the August. A different time, hey? Well, let's get started. Let's go in reverse constructors order, shall we? Starting with Alpine. Pierre Gasly. The 29-year-old was 22 7 years ago, driving in his debut season of Formula 1 for Toro Rosso. Debut full season anyway, did do a few races in 17. 28 points by this point of the season post-Russian Grand Prix, with some standout performances to look back on. P4 in Bahrain, P6 in Hungary, P7 in Monaco, comfortably ahead of his teammate Brendan Hartley as well, who only had 2 points by this part of the season. Did Pierre impress in the same way that, say, a Charles Leclerc did in 2018? Not quite, and we will get on to Charles, of course. But he did show Red Bull enough to have the confidence to take him on to replace Daniel Ricciardo, who announced midway through the season that he'd be leaving for Renault at the end of the year. We all know how that one panned out, and the curse that has befallen that second seat ever since, right? But there's something about Pierre Gasly in that 2018 Toro Rosso. It's a great livery. It just hits different. Franco Colapinto. First rookie, Franco Colapinto, 22 years of age right now, which means he was just 15 7 years ago. And that was his debut year in car racing when he jumped up from karts in Spanish F4 to be precise. He did only take part in 4 races at the very end of that season, but he did win the final race of the year. Prior to that, he spent most of 2018 in his final bit of karting, competing in the original kart or OK spec of the CIK FIA Championship ladder. I mean, to be honest, no big results stood out in that 2018 final year of karting for him. It was much more promising in Spanish F4 in 2018, and he'd go on to win that championship in 2019, by the way. So he set the foundations. Franco was getting into his groove. Nico Hulkenberg. Good old Hulk. Right, so he had quite the 2018, I think it's fair to say. Slap in the middle of his 3-year stint at Renault, and the good results were very good. P6s in Bahrain, China and Great Britain, and a P5 in his home race in Hockenheim. Post-Russia, he was sitting joint P7 in the Drivers' Championship on 53 points, and would finish the year best of the rest, P7 with 69. Nice. And you know what's crazy? That P7 he finished in 2018 is his best ever finishing position in Formula 1 in his entire career. And even more insane, he DNF'd 7 times that season he DNF'd. Madness. Renault, sort it out. Well, I guess they have sorted it out by decided to not do their own engines anymore. I guess that would probably help. Gabriel Bortoleto. Alright, next rookie, it's Gabby. The 20-year-old was just 13 7 years ago. Now, Bortoleto had a bunch of success in the OK Junior, Original Kart Junior, the one below Franco Colapinto in 2018. Racing for a very, very good team, CRG, who'd previously had Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen on their books, so pretty well trodden. We've got a bunch of banging results here, right? So Bortoleto finished P2 in the one-off Trofeo Andrea Margutti, then P2 in the WSK Supermaster Series, then P3 in the CIK FIA European Championship, then P3 in the CIK FIA World Championship. A superb season against top talent in the likes of Paul Aaron, Gabriele Mini, Jack Crawford, Dino Beganovic, and another current F1 driver, actually. Guesses below. For 2019, Gabby would make his step up to the OK class of karting, and it wouldn't be till 2020 where he'd make his actual open wheeler race car debut. So he was a long way off 7 years ago, but the signs were absolutely there in the results that he was able to get. And talking of top results, I reckon you should check out today's video sponsor, Squarespace, especially if you have a small to medium sized business and you're looking to deliver your goods, your services to the world. Be that physical products like I've sold on TOMMO'SRacingGoods.com, my website hosted by Squarespace, or digital assets, or a blog, or a portfolio, or whatever you may want a website for. Thousands of beautiful drag and drop templates at your fingertips. AI powered design intelligence making it an absolute breeze. Even I can put something half decent looking together. 24/7 customer support and completely free to try. You only have to pay for anything when you want to publish your finished website live to the world. And when you do, head to squarespace.com/TOMMO'F1 to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. Esteban Ocon, oh Esty Bestie Bestaban. He had quite the 2018, didn't he? It was a season racing for what started the year as the Sahara Force India Formula 1 team and ended the year as the Racing Point Force India Formula 1 team. All in all, I think he did a pretty good job when him and teammate Sergio Perez weren't engaging in domestic terrorism against one another anyway. These two did not play nice. Ocon actually led Perez home in Russia, a P9, P10, double points finish respectively. However, by end of the season, it was 49-62 points wise in favour of Sergio. Now there is context to that. Of course, Sergio got his big P3 in Baku, huge result that season, and only retired twice all year. Esteban had 5 DNFs. Ocon had the advantage in qualifying. I would say over the course of the season, they were pretty equal, and maybe that's why they, clashed so much, because they found themselves so close to each other on track so many times. And as we all know, Ocon lost his seat at the end of 2018 for Lance Stroll to come in. I mean, as much as that was harsh on Esteban, they did kind of need to split him and Checo up, and Checo brings the bag. Oh, and also 2018 was when Esteban had this little tangle with Max in Brazil when trying to unlap himself. No love lost between these two, as far as I'm aware. I'm sure they've sorted it out now, right? Come on, lads, it's 7 years. Ollie Bearman. So what about the boys from Chelmsford? Ollie Cubman, because he was not an adult, he was 13 like Gabriel Bortoleto 7 years ago, which again is crazy. However, you have to say they had very, very different 2018s, did the Brazilian versus the Brit. Because whilst Bortoleto was putting himself at the very top of the premier European karting series, Ollie was just breaking through outside of racing in the UK. Ollie only competed in one event in 2018, notable enough to make his Wikipedia page anyway, the IAME Winter Series in the X30 Junior class. He finished 5th in the 14-lap event in Valencia, a race won by Aston Martin Jr. Mari Boyer. Why didn't he participate in more events in that year? Honestly, I'm not so sure. When I spoke to Ollie back at the start of 24, he did mention that budget constraints were a factor in his journey up the kind of racing ladder, hence why his first 5 years in karts were solely based in the UK. But it didn't slow him down because, spoiler alert, he basically won everything he raced in 2019. So it worked out in the end. Fernando Alonso. 7 years ago, Fernando Alonso was 37 years old. Ollie Bearman was 13. Gabriel Bortoleto was 13. Alonso was 37. That's kind of like, genuinely, the longevity of this man needs to be studied. I believe there are genuine medical advancements that could be made by, he's just ridiculous. Like, to keep up this level of mental acuity at 44 and still be at the top of your game racing against these young bloods who would come through and just I don't get it. Anyway, of course, he was in F1 at the time in the final year of his second stint at McLaren, his very disappointing second stint at McLaren. GP2 engine and the rest. The season started well actually in 2018, P5 in the first race of the season at Bahrain. It only went downhill from there. And as I'm sure the realization dawned on Fernando that things weren't going to work out in the second stint at McLaren, his attention moved elsewhere, didn't it? Set forth the 24-hour of Le Mans. Toyota Gazoo Racing were keen to bounce back after an absolutely heartbreaking 2017, where a combination of technical failures and getting crashed into meant that they lost almost guaranteed opportunity to win that race. So for 2018, the man to step aside in the Toyota Gazoo Racing seat to make way for Fernando was Sky Sports' very own Anthony Davidson, seeing Alonso line up alongside Sebastian Buemi and Kazuki Nakajima. And this time out, their number 8 car was put on pole by Kazuki and converted into a P1 finish, a Toyota 1-2 and all, with the P3 LMP1 car 10 laps down from the second Toyota car. So absolute domination here. And that 2018 Le Mans 24-hour win still remains Fernando Alonso's most recent top step of the podium. You have to go back to 2013 for his last one in F1, 12 years ago. That's disgusting. Lance Stroll. Lance was still a teenager 7 years ago, which is kind of crazy because it feels like he's been in this sport forever. He was 19 back then, soon to turn 20 in his second season of Formula 1 at Williams. A struggling Williams who were on the cusp of their absolutely horrific 2019 season. Stroll had a pretty forgettable Russian Grand Prix, a P15 finish in the end, and was only able to manage 2-point scoring finishes all season. A P8 in Azerbaijan, a P9 in Monza. Surprise, surprise, two tracks that are all about power unit, low downforce performance. The Williams' only good thing about that car was the Mercedes power unit in the back, so they could bring performance at those Grand Prix. Like Sergei Sirotkin, his teammate that season, got his only point of the year in Monza. Sirotkin was actually marginally quicker than Lance as well in qualifying. There was very little in it between the two of them. I think Sirotkin got harshly judged, actually, because at the time you can definitely argue he was the stronger driver than Lance. But of course Lance has been given the opportunity to improve and become a driver that he's very talented, just still has a rookie mistake in him. Isaac Hadjar. Today as a 21-year-old, 7 years ago as a 14-year-old. Spending most of that 2018 year racing in the OKJ series of top-tier karting, he's the mysterious driver who was racing alongside Gabriel Bortoleto back in the day. It has to be said though, Gabby's record was way stronger than Isaac's back then. I mean, in the CIK FIA European Championship, P16 Isaac, P3 Gabriel. In the World Championship, P22 Isaac, P3 Gabriel. So fair to say, not the most memorable standout season in karts by any stretch of the imagination. However, this was the year Isaac made his first jump into, well, not open wheelers, just cars. He raced in Ginettas. Just 3 races for Isaac in the Ginetta Junior Winter Championship. Liam Lawson. Liam's 23 right now, making him 16 years of age 7 years ago. And those extra couple of years he has on the other rookies right now means that his 7 years ago is a little bit more car than car. Specifically, ADAC Formula 4, which is essentially German F4. Now that 2018 ADAC F4 had a bunch of names you will know in the field: Freddie Vesti, Enzo Fittipaldi, Cal Collet, even Jack Doohan. And Liam did a superb job, 3 wins all season, 7 podiums, wound up P2. Quite a bit behind championship winner Laurent Zendele in the end, but still pretty good. He did also do a little 3-race stint in F3 Asian, all at Sepang, all wins. Although this certainly wasn't the most competitive grid in the world. I mean, Jake Hughes won all 9 races he'd competed in earlier on that year. But you can only beat what's in front of you, right? Alex Albon, the greatest Formula 1 driver of all time, 29-year-old right now, 22-year-old 7 years ago. And as many of you will know, in that 2018 Formula 2 season, he was one of 3 established F1 stalwarts today who were cutting it up. Racing for French outfit Dams, he took his first feature race win of the year at round 2 in Baku. Took another couple in Silverstone and Sochi, plus a sprint race win at the Hungaroring. Now, he was looking good for P2, however had an absolute howler of a finale at Abu Dhabi. Very minimal points on the board versus Lando Norris, who got his P2 and just nipped him at the end. And it did look like Alex was destined for FE instead of F1. He secured a deal in 2018 to race for Dams Formula E team, the Nissan E-Dams team, for 2019 alongside Sebastian Buemi. But then Daniel Ricciardo said he was going to leave Red Bull, which meant Pierre got promoted to Red Bull, and then Helmut Marko came calling, ring, 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 Alex, are you available? And the rest, as they say, is history. Good old Vamos. 31 years old today, making him 24 7 years ago. And this serial team hopper that we all know and love was in his second team of his Formula 1 career at Renault alongside Nico Hulkenberg, who we've already talked about already. In reality, he stacked up pretty favourably relative to his more experienced teammate. Again, Nico got 69 points by the end of the year. Carlos got 53. A P5 in Baku was Carlos's best result of the year, but he wasn't quite able to match Hulkenberg's consistency of getting into that kind of top 6 territory. Hulk managed it 6 times all season, Sainz only twice. But this would also be Carlos's last year at Renault. Zach Brown decided, you know what, if Fernando's going to move to pastures new, we're going to drop Van Dorn because he's just been absolutely obliterated by the Spaniard. We're going to bring a young British guy in that we'll talk about in a bit. We're also going to bring in Carlos Sainz as an experienced old head, and I would say that that decision actually paid off a blinder because, of course, Carlos was great in McLaren. That got him the Ferrari seat, and obviously now he's at Williams, but, you know, Lewis. Anyway, we're talking about 7 years ago because 2018 was a good enough year. It wasn't great in isolation, but it was enough to get him spotted by Zach and get him that better seat for 2019 onwards. Max Verstappen, 28 today, making him 21 7 years ago. I can't believe I'm 4 years older than Max Verstappen. Obviously, he was driving for Red Bull in 2018. Obviously, he was already making a hell of an impression. And obviously, he could have fought for a world title if he didn't have an absolute of an engine in the back. Because that Renault, man, I mean, they didn't even tag it as a Renault. They tagged it as a Tag Heuer because they were so disappointed in it. But even then in 2018, he still managed to finish 2 points ahead of the other Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas, and only 2 points behind Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari. Lewis and Seb owned the championship narrative, of course they did, but Max picked up wins in Austria and Mexico as well and showed what he was all about. Now, was he still a bit crashed up and back then? Absolutely. Him and Daniel had their iconic coming together in 2018 in Baku. Had a couple of run-ins with Seb as well in Shanghai and Suzuka. Wrote off his car in Monaco FP3. The mistakes were there. The over-pushing was there. But I would say 2018 was the last of the crashed-happen seasons, in my opinion anyway. Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki. 25 today, meaning he was just 18 years of age 7 years ago. And this was a big year for the young Tsunoda because the year prior, in 2017, he finished third in Japanese F4 and first in the alternative JAF Formula 4 Championship. But he was still just racing in Japan. This needed to be a big season to give him the opportunity to make the move to Europe to set his path to Formula 1. He went all in, only racing in Japanese F4 that season, and it started in Okayama terribly. In fact, he put it on pole, lost position into turn 1, then got punted by the guy in P3 and retired from that race. Fortunately, he'd bounce back in race 2, win that one, then go back to back in Fuji and Suzuka, winning all 4 races in those 2 rounds. The season rounded up at Motegi with Yuki finishing 14 points clear of P2 Championship 1. A superb year for Yuki, enough to get him a 2019 Euro Formula and FIA Formula 3 seat, again setting him on the path to the F1 driver that he is today. Charles Leclerc. 2018 was a special season for Charles for many reasons. First of all, it's his debut year in Formula 1, racing for what was the Alfa Romeo Sauber Formula 1 team back then, and the 20-year-old at the time was going to be alongside a fairly established teammate in Marcus Ericsson, a good yardstick to see how well the Monegasque kid could do. To this point, he'd already impressed big time, having gone back-to-back GP3 and F2 and having done some FP1s for Haas and Sauber in 16 and 17 respectively. However, things didn't start spectacularly. P13, P12 and P19 at Australia, Bahrain and China respectively. But then came Baku round 4 and a P6. A huge drive, a great performance, helped by the 7 DNFs. That was an absolutely chaotic race. Thank you, Daniel and Max. But what that result did do is spark the rest of the season, which would go very, very well for him. Outside of the 5 retirements Charles had that season, he was consistently either on the fringe of points or in them. Marcus, on the other hand, in the other Sauber, was not. And Charles rounded out the season with 3 back-to-back-to-back P7 finishes, best of the rest in a Sauber. By the end of the year, it was a no-brainer. Kimi Raikkonen was going to leave Ferrari for 2019. There was a seat opening up, and in hindsight, it's the obvious decision. 39 points by end of year versus Ericsson's 9. Wasn't even close. One of the best junior rookie seasons, arguably the best junior rookie season of modern times. It's certainly up there. Lewis Hamilton. 2018 was a 33-year-old Lewis Hamilton's 11th in the sport and his 5th World Championship win. Sebastian Vettel definitely gave him a scare in the first half of the year, but after his retirement in Hockenheim, Lewis just checked out, right? 8 wins in the final 11 rounds of the year, including a win around Sochi. I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, a very, very capable teammate in Valtteri Bottas finishing all the way down in P5. You can't tell me it was just the car. Lewis Hamilton in his prime Mercedes, the car that really suited his style, his fit, his feel. He was unbeatable. George Russell, racing in F2 alongside Lando Norris and Alex Albon. A 20-year-old George Russell made an even bigger impression than the two of them. 4 feature race, 3 sprint race wins to his name. He got it done in a big way. Just as Charles did, and just as Gabby and Oscar have done since he went back-to-back Formula 3, Formula 2, which meant he was already well on Mercedes' radar. They picked him up early doors. Didn't do any FP1s though in 2018, did George. He did have a run out with Force India in 2017 around Brazil, but still kept himself front and centre and made that move to Williams a pretty confident one in the end. Even though the car was tragically bad in 2019, George held up his end of the bargain and was loyal to Williams. Kimi Antonelli. Andrea Kimi Antonelli was literally 12 years old 7 years ago. He wasn't even a teenager yet, he was a child. And what was he up to? Was he racing in open wheelers? Was he doing it? No, obviously not, he wasn't. He was doing karting in the 60 mini category, which is from 8 to 12 years old. And actually, when you look at the results, 2018 was kind of his breakout year. I'm going to try my best to wrap through all of them in one breath. So these are his results, all of his results in 2018. So WSK Champions Cup P1. Southgard Winter Cup P1, WSK Supermaster Series P3, WSK Open Cup P6, Italian Championship P2, Trofeo di Autunno P3, definitely butchered that pronunciation, ROK Cup Challenge P1, ROK Cup International Final P1, WSK Final Cup in the OKJ class P5. Unbelievable consistency, domination for sure, by every measure. And Mercedes signed him at the start of 2018. And one would have been chuffed to see how the year panned out for him. It's when you look at Antonelli's karting record and just how dominant he was that you can understand why Toto's holding on to this belief that he is the next best thing. And when he puts it on pole in Miami, just shows that, yeah, that talent is absolutely unquestionably there. Lando Norris. We've already talked about Alex, we've already talked about George. Now we're on to an 18-year-old Lando Norris who competed against his 2 pals 7 years ago in F2. Lando did only manage 1 race win all season, the feature race in Bahrain, but that speaks for his consistency throughout the year to still finish ahead of Alex, who took 3 feature race wins and a sprint. 4 P3s, 4 P2s, only a couple of retirements to his name as well. Lovely stuff, Lando Norris. McLaren had signed Lando the year previous in 2017, but for 2018 they'd made him official test and reserve driver. That meant he got his first FP1 run out at his home from home Grand Prix in Belgium and a bunch of FP1s in the tail end of 2018. There was one other thing though that kept Lando busy in 2018. Stateside with his old pal Fernando. Will I detail that in this video? Absolutely not. Why? Because I've already made a video dedicated to him and Fernando racing in 2018 around Indianapolis. Link above, link in the description below. Go and watch it because no one seemed to be interested at the time. So we could do with bumping that one's views up, please. Thank you very much. Oscar Piastri. And finally, the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, was 17 years old 7 years ago, plying his trade in Formula Renault Euro Cup racing for the team that Christian Horner set up way back in the day in Arden. No wins would come his way at all in 2018. He would come close with a couple of P3s and a P2 and ended that season P8 behind, well, Max Futrell dominated that year. You had Christian Lundgaard, Logan Sargent, Victor Martin also finished ahead of Oscar. Piastri also participated in the Formula Renault Northern Cup in 2018. He wasn't technically registered as a finishing position because he was a guest driver or some bureaucracy about that, whatever. He still managed a couple of P3s and a P2 in the 8 races he did participate in. And honestly, like, you look at Oscar's CV, his career at the time, second in British F4 the year prior in 2017. Was the big highlight. There were no big highlights in 2018. I don't think any Wikipedia expert like myself could have looked at Oscar 7 years ago and thought he'd even get into F1 anywhere near F1, let alone be one of the best drivers and possibly going to win a championship. Like, wow, because 2019 was the first big impressive look at me year for Oscar, where he won Formula Renault Euro Cup, then won F3, then won F2 back to back to back. But yeah, it just makes you think, right? The top drivers in 2032, in another 7 years time, is it someone who's just sat in Formula Renault Euro Cup right now, fairly mediocre, but not for whatever reason, whether it's technical unreliability, whether it's budget, whether it's just bad luck, whether it's the skills not developed yet? You know, they're not in that place right now. They're not setting the world alight like a Bortoleto or an Antonelli did when they were in karts, you know? Like Logan Sargent was an absolute demon in karting. You compare his record to Oscar Piastri and you're thinking Logan's the guy. But turns out he wasn't. Food for thought, eh? Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like and comment your thoughts and feelings down below. Who's going to be in this list in 2032? Freddie Slater, maybe? Ugo Guchukwu? There's plenty of names in junior categories who could be stars of the future. We'll do this video in 2027 again, shall we? My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.